Playing on a Budget is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the best Magic the Gathering singles and sealed retailer on the internet, GatheringMagic.com, your #1 source for Magic the Gathering news and content, and RogueDeckBuilder.com, my personal channel filled with innovative and entertaining Magic the Gathering rogue brews. Hi there, it's Kevin with GatheringMagic.com here with this week's episode of Playing on a Budget. As you can see, we got Warriors again. The reason I'm playing Warriors for this week's Playing on a Budget is I did make a Black-Blue Sphinx's Tutelage deck and queued it up, and I thought it was a creative, good idea, and it just got murdered by Abzan 3 games in a row. And so I said enough is enough, and it wasn't even like close, so it made for a really bad video series where I was getting destroyed by first turn, almost every game first turn of the 1-drop that turns into a 3/3. And then followed up by Dromoka's Commands and Siege Rhinos. So I'm going to give it a rest right now. And I looked at the metagame, and it's back to 18 to 20% of the decks in the field on MTGO, and maybe back at your local metagame, are back to playing Abzan. So it is back to the good old Siege Rhino deck, and so I'm going to go back to the go-to deck that I had a lot of success beating up the Siege Rhino decks, and that is Black-White Warriors. It's because that we can usually keep their board completely free, and the way that I've built this Warriors is not a traditional Warriors deck. It is a 24 lands with a pretty higher curve converted mana cost, just utilizing a lot of creatures that get tons of value. So I've minimized as many of the 1-drops, because what happens is they bring in a lot of hate for your early drops, and then you can just go over the top of them with cards like Brutal Hordechief and Wingmate Roc. And we have one of Sorin, Solemn Visitor in the deck, and one of Raider Spoils, which helps you draw a bunch of cards. So we do have some life gain in this deck through the Brutal Hordechief, Wingmate Rocs, and the Sorin. They can help us stabilize versus aggro. But what I really like about this deck is we have answers, a lot of answers versus Abzan. Valorous Stance is just an amazing card versus Abzan. It kills Rhinos. It kills Wingmate Rocs, at least half of a Wingmate Roc. It can protect your guys against cards like Dromoka's Command. You can give it indestructible, and then on the by doing so, a lot of times if they're trying to use Dromoka's Command to kill your creature, but theirs could still die, the indestructibility just becomes huge on your end. Kills their creature, yours lives, and whatnot. Usually it's not the scenario. I've seen them use it on like their Death Toucher though, and throw the counter on something else and just use their Death Toucher as the removal. We're going to still use the Mardu Woe-Reaper because there is still some strategies that use graveyards, and the Mardu Woe-Reaper does the best job at exiling graveyards. I've cut down a lot of the 1-drops. This used to have a ton of 1-drops in it, but there's still 10. So the problem is, like, you want the... I used to use Dragon Hunters pretty religiously in this deck, but I found that with an environment that had... What happened was the metagame switched over to a Wild Slash heavy metagame, and then the Dragon Hunters were just awful. They just immediately died. If you're running too many Mardu Woe-Reapers, then between the Dragon Hunters and Mardu Woe-Reapers, the Wild Slash just got so much value, and if it was like a Jace or a Jeskai type deck, then they could flash it back and get more value. Add Fiery, the Fiery Impulse, is that? No, what the Fiery spell that does 2 damage or 3 damage of a spell mastery was also very good. And so I wanted cards that actually would impact the board no matter what, and Mardu Woe-Reaper is one of those. Bloodsoaked Champion is a warrior that can recur, and the Mardu Shadowspear is something you can dash in. And don't underestimate this. This is actually a very powerful card with the dash. You still, though, want to have a 1-drop into the Battle Brawler, and that's where the Chief of the Edge is very important. So we want Battle Brawler to be a 3 as soon as possible, especially against Abzan, because it allows them to block their Death Touch, their 2/2 Death Touch. It allows them to block the Den Protector. It allows them to block the Warden and survive and first strike it down. So it used to be ultimate prices that were main boardable, but Complete Disregard just seems to do a lot better job against Hangerback Walker. Still can kill Jace We have some ultimate prices in the sideboard, but really what puts us over the top against Abzan is Self-Inflicted Wound, and that allows them to, it kind of negates the Siege Rhino. It also takes care of early drops. We have enough 1-drops we're probably still going to put out a 1-drop, and then be able to get in some damage. What I like to do with this deck is go first turn a 1-drop, second turn a Battle Brawler or a Chief, and then just keep the board cleared through a lot of times bringing in Self-Inflicted Wounds, ultimate prices, and then you just tempo them out. You do 5 damage, 5 damage, 5 damage. And what's really cool about this deck particularly is your opponents do end up bringing a lot of hate for creatures. And then you just use a lot of the more value-based creatures like the Wingmate Roc and the Secure the Waste are wonderful. I've won a ton of games through Secure the Waste with Raider Spoils. We still have a Bloodchain Ranger to help us. This can be a very aggressive card. Makes it so that all your warriors gain menace when they attack. And what this deck is almost exclusively all of Khans of Tarkir block, but the Shambling Vents are very important for this deck. It's another card that against control or the later games that you can activate a Shambling Vent and attack in with a lifelinker. It actually helps you stabilize not bad against another aggressive deck. And I find that running 2 Scoured Barrens for fixing is still the right play. That's why we're running such a high land count though. Secure the Waste, the more lands the merrier. The Wingmate Rocs we need to hit, and the Sorin Simulacrum we need to hit 4 pretty consistently with this deck. And a lot of times just unloading your hand if you have complete disregards and still being able to cast a spell is crucial to winning. So I'm hoping that this deck is still as good as it was at the start when everyone was just on Abzan and green-white Megamorph, because I had a very, very high win percentage with this deck. Over to the prices, let me just bring up the prices. We're down to a $90.57. Probably runs a bit over budget when you include all of the commons and uncommons, but we're going to keep it as is. There are some expensive cards in here with the one of Sorin at $9.75, the Wingmate Rocs at $7. Secure the Waste are actually getting pretty pricey at $5.50, but the rest of the deck is pretty budget with Bloodsoaked Champions and Brutal Hordechief only being 3, and your mana base isn't nearly as bad as the rest of the standard mana base, as you don't need to run any fetch lands. So Shambling Vents and Caves are incredibly inexpensive. So we will go back to the deck tech. The Chiefs are really in here for Wild Slash. You bring these in against the burn decks, and then your warriors become out of range of the Wild Slash. Your Battle Brawler survives. Your Chief of the Edges survives. The Abzan Advantage is in here for Silk Wrap. And the Self-Inflicted Wound, that's pretty self-explanatory. It comes in against any green or white deck. So, I know I've played this for playing on a budget again. I was just sick of failing with a couple of different brews. I'm going to show you that brew that I failed with, because I think it will get a lot better when I add white. And I can do that for Rogue's Alley this weekend instead of playing on a budget, because I think it needs the fetch lands. And when you're running 4 Polluted Deltas and 4 Flooded Strands and 2 Sunken Hollows and 2 Prairie Streams, your mana base is way above the budget. It's already $200 on the mana base, so there's no way I can play it on playing a budget. And unfortunately, I need that, because I think that the best route to go is to be able to rally things back. And without that, I don't think the deck functions without Rally the Ancestors. It was just too clunky, too slow, and especially decks like Abzan that are progressively getting better each turn, with like a 1-drop, a 2-drop, a 3-drop, a 4-drop, a 5-drop, a Planeswalker mixed in the list, some Dramoka's Commands and Abzan Charms. There's no way that like a 1-for-1 deck using Bone Splinters and creatures that replace themselves can really compete. And that's kind of what the deck was based around. Drawing a bunch of cards with Sphinx's Tutelage and milling them. And Sphinx's was really bad against Dramoka's Command. So anyway, we'll queue this up and hopefully this does a lot better. Hate to do a whole nother video series after I've done one, but it is what it is, and I hope you're not too sick of Warriors. But I want to promote Warriors. I think it's a great introductory deck, because you can start picking up the bulk of the deck can be picked up for very, very budget. Instead of like the rares, you can pick up just commons and uncommons, and the deck does work through Valorous Stance, Ultimate Price, Complete Disregard as your removal package, and then running just Mardu Woe-Reapers, and you have Mardu Shadowspears, and you have the Dragon Hunters and the Chiefs, and both of the Chiefs, and Raider Spoils being kind of your Anthem effect. I think that as a budget, this deck can still highly compete in the metagame. So we'll queue this up. This has been Kevin with GatheringMagic.com. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Playing on a Budget. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Gathering Magic and check out our Playing on a Budget playlist, which contains every episode. Thanks again and hope to see you soon.